Hello, friends, and welcome to summer at St. Andrew. It is my privilege to welcome you here today from the beautiful St. Andrew Sanctuary. I am grateful, as always, to share this sacred online space with you, where we are all invited, included, and valued as vital and beloved members of our broader worshiping community. St. Andrew is proud to be an open, affirming, inclusive congregation that welcomes all people into the full life and communion of our church. This includes saints and sinners, believers and skeptics, the lost and the found, the wanderers and the wanderers, families of all shapes and sizes, and people from every point along life's journey. No matter who you are or where you've been, no matter what you believe or even if you believe anything at all, you are welcome here and you belong here. If you have any questions about our church, prayer requests for our care team, or if you would like to get in touch with a member of our pastoral team or staff, please email info@gosaintandrew.com. If you would like to explore deeper engagement with the St. Andrew community through our many classes, group life gatherings, service opportunities, and a host of summer events, you can visit our website or email us directly at connect@gosaintandrew.com. We'd love to hear from you. Just as a reminder, our full Sunday morning worship services, complete with music, prayer, announcements, liturgy, ministry spotlights, and the sermon, are live streamed on our YouTube page each week and permanently archived for viewing anytime. Lastly, to contribute a financial gift to the work and ministry of St. Andrew, you can always visit gosaintandrew.com/give or text St. Andrew to 28950. And now let's listen together to this week's scripture and sermon.
A reading from Matthew chapter 13, verses 45 and 46. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls. On finding one pearl of great value, she went and sold all that she had and bought it.
Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like when a shop owner is looking for fine pearls, and after finding one of extraordinary value, she goes and sells everything to buy that one pearl. One of the most important yet difficult lessons we can learn in life is that we simply cannot have it all. To be human is to want this and that and the other, and to try to do everything all at once, and to be all things to all people, and to be pulled in a million different directions by the lure of a million different shiny things, even as we know we cannot have it all, and cannot do it all, and cannot be it all. We wish this were not true, and we delay acknowledging this truth for as long as we possibly can, until we finally fail at trying to have it all and to do it all and to be it all, and it becomes uncomfortably, even painfully clear that we must ultimately choose. We must choose between what is good and what is better, what is valuable and what is priceless, what is admirable and what is incomparable. I read about a successful businessman and investment guru who came to discover this truth the hard way. Mohammed El-Arian was the CEO of a $2 trillion bond fund called PIMCO. Maybe you've heard of it. He earned north of $100 million a year. And one day he abruptly resigned from his position to spend more time with his 10-year-old daughter. His decision came after this argument that he'd had with his daughter. He was yelling at her to brush her teeth, and she refused, and he pulled the "I'm your father and you'll do what I say" routine, to which she responded, "Hold, please." She retreated to her bedroom and produced a list of 22 important moments in her life, birthdays, recitals, school events, that her father had missed because of his work obligations. I mean, the kid just dropped the mic. The following day, El-Arian resigned. He became a full-time dad. He raised his daughter and became now one of the leading economists in Egypt. You can't have it all. You can't do it all. You can't be it all. Eventually life or God or your spouse or friend or sponsor or therapist or your brave 10-year-old says, no, you must choose. And it's so hard to hear that, but it's even harder to do it. To choose between work and family, this commitment and that one, doing your part or taking a breather, pursuing your dreams or fulfilling your obligations, investing in yourself or giving yourself away. Does this sound at all familiar? We wake up and we say, okay, today I got a great plan, 30 minutes of hot yoga, read a chapter of my book, pray, meditate, learn Portuguese, call my mother, volunteer at the food bank, be a great employee, a loving parent, a caring friend, and start eating right. And I know I haven't yet gotten out of bed, but man, do I have a great plan. But before your feet even touch the floor, your dog is thrown up on the carpet and a text from your boss says, can you work late today to finish that project for me? And your kid has COVID for the 4th time, and it suddenly occurs to you that you completely slept through your alarm. The writer Madeleine L'Engle said, it's the ability to choose that makes us human. But choosing is hard. Not only because we have an abundance of choices before us every day, but because every day it can feel like life is almost choosing for us, calling the shots, pulling our chain. The Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard was right when he said, unless it wills one thing, a person's life is sure to become one of wretched mediocrity, of pitiful misery. That's pretty harsh, but it's true. Kierkegaard said purity of heart is to will one thing. Which is why Jesus tells this story. Heaven on earth, he says, is like a merchant who spends her whole life searching for fine pearls. The Greek word for pearls, curiously, is margaritas. Don't let your imagination run too far. Jesus wasn't comparing heaven on earth to cocktails, but to gemstones. This jeweler is an expert in gemstones. She knows her business. And from time to time, she hears rumors of a pearl diver who has retrieved a priceless pearl. One worth, they say, more than any pearl ever discovered. And she always goes to investigate, but invariably she returns disappointed. She has a trained eye. And when it comes to pearls, she is no fool. And she does not waste her time. Which is why when she hears another report about someone finding a pearl of the most extraordinary quality, she goes with guarded curiosity. She's heard it a million times before, but it's her job to investigate, as dubious as the report might be. But when she arrives and inspects this pearl, this priceless pearl, it's unlike anything she's ever laid eyes on. She's finally found what she's been looking for her entire life. This, she knows immediately, is the mother of pearls. It does happen. In 2006, a Filipino fisherman discovered the largest natural pearl on record. 75 pounds, 2 feet long, a foot wide, 170,000 carats. He discovered the pearl in a giant clam. And for 10 years, he hid that pearl under his bed as a good luck charm. And that pearl's existence wasn't even revealed until 2016. Today, it's valued at around $200 million. I once found a pearl, not like that, but true story. We were living in San Diego. I'd taken Lori, my wife, for dinner to celebrate our 20th anniversary, and I ordered oysters on the half shell. I didn't even like oysters at the time, but the server said, hey, the oysters are on special. You should try them. And I succumbed to the peer pressure I ordered 2. They came on a platter of shaved ice and garnish, these 2 gooey, slimy bivalves. I scooped one of them out and dropped it into my mouth and chewed with feigned delight, pretending to enjoy it. When I felt this unsettling crunch between my back molars, I assumed I had broken a tooth, so I instinctively yet casually reached in. What I pulled out was not a tooth, but a generous, translucent pearl. At which point I made the swaggiest spousal maneuver ever. I cleaned it off, I reached across the table, I offered it to Lori, and I said, "Happy anniversary." But in Jesus' parable, this pearl isn't found accidentally, and this is the key. Jesus says that she's been looking for this pearl like her whole life, and she's finally found it. The asking price, it turns out, is pretty high, but it's worth everything she has. And so she puts her whole jewelry shop up to the market, and on the market, everything must go. Customers come and go until her shop is empty, and she has the cash in hand, and she buys that one pearl that she's been searching for her entire life. That pearl is more wonderful than she could have imagined, and more attainable than anyone could ever have dreamed of. Anyone could have bought that pearl, but no one, apparently, had the vision or the willingness to let go of whatever it might have taken to actually buy it. No one, that is, but her. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like that. And what is the kingdom of heaven? It's everything the ancient prophets ever talked about. And it's everything Jesus ever lived for. Shalom, peace, wholeness, completeness, contentment, abundance and happiness and justice and laughter and dancing and enough food and wine for everyone to sit at God's table. Because they all said when heaven finally comes on earth, they all said it, no one will be in need. And everyone will have enough, and enemies will become friends, and strangers will become like kin. And all will be well, and all manner of things will be well. And Jesus asks, isn't this worth absolutely anything and everything to you? I mean, says Jesus, who wouldn't be willing right now to sell everything to have that? Who wouldn't empty the shelves and cash out just to possess this one priceless pearl, this heaven on earth that we pray for? What are we willing to give up to get heaven on earth? C.S. Lewis, in his famous Screw Tape Letters, reminds us that the trap for many Christians is living a life of too many pursuits. In the book, the older demon Screwtape suggests to his nephew Wormwood that the way to ruin people is to make them think of Christianity as just another part of their lives, rather than to make it the central focus. And he says, nurse him onto the stage at which religion becomes merely a part of his life. And once you have made the world an end, he says, and faith only a means, you've almost won. And it makes very little difference what kind of worldly end he is pursuing. What end are you pursuing? Is it merely a worldly end, or is it heaven on earth? Not just for us, but for those lives that are far from anything that we consider heavenly. Those for whom life is more like a living hell. This parable invites us to look inwardly and ask ourselves, what's getting in my way of experiencing shalom and wholeness, peace, contentment, and satisfaction, heaven on earth right here within me? Am I trying to be it all and to do it all at the expense of my own happiness and peace and well-being? Jesus once said, what will it profit you if you gain the whole world and lose your own soul. We can't have it all. The prophet Isaiah once said, "Why do you spend money on that which is not bread, and your labor on that which does not satisfy?" We can't have it all. Jesus once said, "No one can serve two masters. Loyalty to one feeds contempt for the other." We simply can't have it all. Sometimes the most important work we can do in life is to figure out what to take away. It's the art of elimination, if you will. Michelangelo once said that his David was in the stone, just clamoring to be freed. You ever feel like you're clamoring to be freed from the trappings of too many pursuits, from the prison of too many commitments? I'm a huge fan of Rick Rubin. Rubin wrote a book recently called The Creative Act. Rubin is all about the art of elimination, simplification, clarity of focus. And he preaches often that less is so much more. Rubin, if you know, is a music producer. He started out working with some of the best hip-hop artists in the 90s, Run DMC, LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys. He's since worked with artists like Tom Petty, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and the legendary Johnny Cash. Rubin, in fact, really helped save Cash's music career. By the early 1990s, Cash had been nearly forgotten by the music industry. In fact, he'd been dropped by his record label of 30 years. He was 60 years old with crippling health problems and a drug addiction. His career was virtually over until Rubin reached out. Rubin encouraged Johnny Cash to start playing without a band. No backup singers, no musicians, just a guitar and a microphone. Rubin then landed Cash a solo gig in Los Angeles. Cash was terrified when he went on stage. This guy had been performing for 40 years, all with a band. But now, he was alone, just a man with a guitar and a handful of songs. But by the end of that show, Cash had launched a whole new career. People who were there for that night said it was one of the best performances they had ever seen. Rubin's secret? He helped Cash strip away all the staging and trappings that he'd relied on for decades. And in the process, he helped Cash discover his voice, a voice that had been always there, all along. Discovering that voice changed Cash's life. And he also found peace for once. You can't do everything. You can't have everything. You have to focus. Rubin's advice, he says, zoom in and obsess. Zoom out and observe. We get to choose. What trappings and pursuits are getting in our way of experiencing peace and shalom, the presence of the divine? Once we figure that out, the parable then invites us to look at the world and ask, what's the pearl we want to give ourselves to? And where can we find it? And how can we work for it, this heaven on earth? Look for a pearl. Look for a pearl that, at least for you, seems priceless. And just pick one. What is it? Is it children's literacy? Is it food security for families? Is it hunger or homelessness, equity and inclusion? Is it gun safety? Is it climate change? You don't have to do it all. You can't do it all. You just pick one and you do it. Here at St. Andrew, we offer opportunities for giving yourself to any of those pearls that are just waiting for your commitment. But it will require making tough choices. You'll likely have to give something up. Michael Porter of Harvard Business School says, we live in a culture that fosters what he calls straddling. We think we can do it all, that we don't have to make choices, don't ever have to say no to anything, but true impact requires trade-offs. A little here and a little there will only get you a mile wide and an inch deep. Sometimes the most important work we can do is to figure out what to take away or trade away. It helps to remember, I think, the lesson of the pearl itself. The pearl's formation is profoundly organic. A pearl is created when this minuscule foreign object, like sand, becomes trapped within the shellfish. And in self-defense, the mollusk protects itself by encasing that object in a small sack of calcium carbonate, which then hardens and over time adds layer upon layer to that white orb until it becomes what we know as a pearl. And it can take the shellfish up to 3 years to produce a magnificent pearl. But it's out of this space of deep vulnerability and fragility and uncertainty and long-term commitment that a pearl is created. And so it is with the kingdom of heaven. It takes patience and commitment over a long enough timeline. But we humans are so short-sighted and patient. We get distracted. We easily lose focus and attention. If it takes too long, we take on something else instead of sticking with it. Or we settle for pearls that are good, but just not the best. Dorothy Day was born in 1897. She devoted her life to serving and working with the poor on New York's Lower East Side. She died in 1980. She was called at the time America's Mother Teresa. Near the end of her life, the psychologist Robert Coles asked her, "Why don't you write a memoir?" And Dorothy Day said, "Well, I tried, but once I sat down with a piece of paper and I wrote at the top of it, 'A life remembered.' And she said, I just sat there and thought of Christ and his visit to us all those centuries ago. And I said to myself that my great luck was to have had him on my mind for so long in my life." How do you buy that one pearl of great price? The kingdom of heaven, the heaven on earth. With Christ on your mind, go find a fragile need in the world and stay there a while. Our takeaways for today: you don't need to have it all, or do it all, or be it all. Sometimes the most important work we can do in life is to figure out what to take away. Heaven on earth requires patience and commitment over a long enough timeline.